From Florida's Space Coast, this is Your Career.
Welcome to Your Career. I'm Debbie Featherston, your host, and with me today is Kelly Giordano, here to talk about talent development. Kelly, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, your expertise is going to be just really great, I think, and very interesting for our viewers, so thank you for taking this time.
Thanks.
Let's just kick it off by having you tell our viewers, what is talent development?
Well, I'll tell you my definition.
That's good. That's all I care about.
And you know, it can be open to interpretation, which maybe is a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, see, I think this is why it's important to start with a definition of talent development, Kelly, because when people hear it even in the field, in an organization, I don't think people have a really good understanding of that function.
Yeah, well, for me, it's really anything that we do to enhance the organization's culture and values by developing the workforce. So by teaching, training and development, skill development, competency development. I've had the opportunity to really experiencing different pieces of it. So I've worked in recruiting. I've worked in, obviously, training and development for the most part. And that involves a lot of also change management, leadership, managing programs, communications. There's really a lot of great different places and avenues to bring out your skills when you're talking about talent development.
Well, Kelly, I'm curious, for someone that's interested in specializing in talent development, what are some of the core competencies that they should really focus on mastering?
Well, I think it's a great and dynamic industry. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, but I think you have to have a passion for performance improvement. So how can we do things better? You might take one of those avenues, whether it's instructional design or facilitation, and master those competencies. Program management, because most everything in talent development is managed programmatically. So how do I really plan and implement a project well? And change management, for sure.
Yeah.
Again.
What's some type of training or education that, where would they get that training and education? Is there anything specific? You've named some really good topics here.
Well, the great news is, as I said, the learning technology and the world of learning is becoming more accessible. You can go to a massive online open course delivery, and you can actually get college-level courses completely free out there on the internet. So,
that's right.
There's great offer, you can do that, search anywhere, find someone that does it now, and just have some lunchtime and pick their brain a little bit, get a little bit more familiar with what's happening on the job. And certainly there's plenty of certification programs, a great society like the American, what used to be the ASTD, with now American Association of Talent Development, so even that's become more of a talent focus. So there's great ways, and use that 70-20-10 model to pick up a stretch assignment on the job, or you can manage a project if you've never done that before.
Absolutely.
There's great ways to develop your skill on the job.
Because that's one of the things that I'm thinking about. If you have somebody that's really in talent development, but they really want to stretch, what kinds of projects or assignments might you encourage them? And of course, I know it's going to be kind of a depends on where they're currently working.
Sure, but even in your volunteer life, if you're working in some, even if you were working at an animal shelter, taking on a project and really looking at how to plan that well, how to think about all of the communications that need to be delivered, and how to coordinate all of that before a candidate is even actually an employee. Talent development is part of how do you attract them? How do you make the organization a place that they're going to want to go, where they can advance their careers?
Tell me a little bit more about what that might look like.
Well, it's changing with social media today. That's certainly a big trend in recruiting, is really folks are getting referred more by employees who are already on board. And employers are constantly looking for ways to position themselves and brand the organization as an employer of choice. If they're, for example, appealing to someone who's community interested, to make sure that those are the things that shine, that come with us, and you'll have an opportunity to use this skill set here, and here's how we're going to help you grow. So really showcasing the development that they can expect.
Excellent. What are some of the kinds of roles that one might serve in within the function of talent development?
That's another good thing. There's plenty of them. I mentioned instructional design. And with that, you could also be a developer, so a little bit more hands-on and using some of the learning technology to build learning tools. Program management and project management, certainly. There's there's plenty of communications to be done, so orchestrating that whole symphony of communications. If you like the delivery part, you might become a facilitator versus the trainer in front of the room or on the other end of the WebEx. So there's really a lot of different avenues that you can explore. And of course, if you're with a smaller organization, you might be doing all of those.
Wearing all
switching
kinds of
the hat
hats
every
then.
day, right?
Wow. Well, how do companies employ talent development?
I think if they're smart and want to make it effective, they align it with their business strategy. It always starts with what's the business trying to do, because we're looking for what are the skills, either the gaps that need to be filled to fulfill and deliver on what the organization is doing. So there may be different ways that the organization figures out where that skill is needed to develop that. So in some organizations, that might take the shape of competency management. So where they'll really identify the critical skills that are going to really set apart an exemplar performer from, and then ways to assess and measure where everybody is. So I may be great at one thing, but not so hot at another. And an organization working with me would be able to have perhaps assessment centers, mentors, job chat, a whole host of ways to help me develop in the areas that I need to do better to serve the organization better, and it serves me as an employee.
What would you say is really the benefit and the payoff to a company, investing in talent development?
Well, it's a win-win.
Okay, good deal. Tell me more.
You can't go wrong. You're investing in better performance. So by investing in training and development of folks, you're going to get a better output. So it's making people more productive. It's growing their skills, giving them some stretch, giving them room to explore how to take on more responsibility and different responsibility that your organization needs. So it serves the company as well as the employee.
It sounds like that it really links to retention. It's a way to feed into retention that from, because if it's really tied in at the initial point of recruitment all the way through, making certain that while the person's in their heyday, we'll say, right, their prime within an organization, that they're continuing to grow and develop so they can optimize the contribution that they're making.
Absolutely. Any time in your career path, the most, surveys have consistently supported that, an employer is going to stay with an organization where they see a path forward, where they can see that I'm doing meaningful work. It's work that I'm satisfied in providing that, and they'll if they're engaged in the work, they'll be engaged and committed to the organization. So it's everything that we do to support that engagement and make sure that people are really using the skills they enjoy most.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of research and I should say studies that really show that correlation between the employee engagement and the bottom line.
That's right.
Right. Direct correlation.
There's an absolute link that those who invest in training and development are getting the return on investment.
That's great. Now, based on your experience, what would you say are some of the common elements of a successful talent development program?
I think I'd go back to alignment to start that off. So
Okay.
if you take away anything, that you absolutely want to make sure that you're aligned with the strategy of the business. Because there's so many different things, communications hitting employees day to day. They've got their own job, the departmental views, and what's the competition doing. You have to really make your message succinct and sort of articulate the vision. So making sure that people are on board and understand why we're asking for a change.
Right.
Because there's generally change with talent development. We're taking you from perhaps an area of skill where you don't have it and trying to build that. There's got to be great alignment with the management, since it's not a fix them for me world where there used to be like, oh, send them to training and they come back
all fixed,
shiny and new and working perfectly. So there's a lot more of manager accountability to make sure that they understand why an employee is getting developed, how they're supporting that development, how they're reinforcing new skills in the way that we expect them to be applied, so that it's not a waste of money when someone goes to training. If they come back to the diseased world and none of the new behaviors are going to stick that way.
No reinforcement
Absolutely.
of those behaviors. And when you say development, it's not just training, is it? It could be coaching or mentoring, and there's other...
Absolutely. 20% could be through mentoring, through more exposure to job shadowing, and coaching, as you mentioned, big skill. And then really only 10% is the formal classroom kind of environment or workshop.
Yeah. How does it differ? How does a talent development program differ in a smaller organization? Because they need it, right?
Sure.
They need it probably sometimes even more.
I think it's a very scalable kind of thing, for sure. Even in a small organization, people want to know that they're supporting something common, that they're on the same, that they belong to the organization. They are understanding and in sync with the values, and they understand that culture and how their role supports the bigger picture. So of course with larger organizations, it can be a little bit more complex because you've got folks who are all around the globe and in different places geographically, and trying to get everyone to be on the same page has a little bit more
different kinds of challenges,
different challenges. But people are people, so when you're really talking about how do I best, even if I'm in a really small organization, even if I'm just, you and I are the company, if I'm your leader, I want to make sure that I'm identifying where your strengths are, where you might need to change it. If I'm looking for where our business is going, where I think we'll need to adapt. So it's constantly evaluating the picture, and good news is the world is always changing, so there's always opportunity to learn. Maybe social media, how am I going to take advantage of that and make that part of the everyday work? So learning is becoming a little bit more ubiquitous, and there's a lot more applications and tools out there to support bite-sized micro-learning, a short video in between a meeting. You might pick up some great tips. So it's
absolutely.
It's great to see the technology adapting.
What is the correlation between talent, and maybe let me rephrase that question. When I think about talent development, I also think that talent development should be synced up with the performance management system. Do you see that done well?
That's a good question. Yes, sometimes, and no, sometimes. So it really is, I think it goes more broadly to the organization's culture around performance feedback. There's a ton of debate, toss out the performance evaluation, it's not working. But I think one of the trends that we're seeing is feedback becoming less formal in terms of it's an annual event and I'm going to sit down and tell you. And to every day, you should be getting feedback every day and recognition for what you're doing right and doing well. So I've always thought of performance management systems as simply a tool. So a better tool is going to help managers do it more effectively, maybe have a place to keep their notes and and describe incidents throughout the year and achievements. But even if I just had a really good spiral-bound notebook, I could be a great performance manager. So it really doesn't necessarily have to be the tool. That's more of a crutch. And I think having a performance mindset is really going to make the difference in good performance management versus not.
Yeah. What are some of the trends that you're currently seeing in talent development?
Well, I mentioned social media. I think that's trending in every direction, certainly in the way that we develop talent and because work is becoming more flexible, so it's good that you can learn mobile. Learning is getting to our tablets and our cell phones. There's also this debate about transparency in talent. So if I think you're a high potential, and that was referring back to the different definitions of talent,
Sure.
to you, talent management might be, well, I want to make sure I identify who are my high potentials, and I'm going to really focus and invest in them, get the most out of them. For others, it might just be, how do I develop everybody? So it's important that you understand which view you have in terms of how to make sure that you're delivering on that view. I think another trend is the fact that it's becoming more of a candidate's market, really. There's going to be more workers than retirees, and understanding that particular candidate and their experience, looking at their experience from the first time they're exposed to the organization to who's involved in interviewing them, you get a real sense for where it's going to be a good fit for that organization. So.
How would you say these trends that you've just cited are really impacting business?
Well, certainly they're impacting the way that recruiters do their job. So a lot more of that is moving to social platforms.
Yeah, we see LinkedIn is the #1 tool of recruiters today.
So it's certainly impacting the way they do their work. By having more metrics and analysis, that's also shifting the way recruiting is done. If we're looking at cost per hire, time to competency, all the analysis that we would do, those are impacting, looking at and being informed better by data. So what does that really mean? Am I getting a bigger return if I look at a different population? If I look at part-time workers versus full-time, if I look at a non-traditional demographic, if I hire, retirees, is that, whatever your segment might be, so the data is really leading us to be more focused, for sure.
Okay. And as I think about the trends, I always am curious about doing a kind of an analysis on the implication it has for the professional. And in this case, what do you see might be some of the implications for the talent development professional?
I think you got to know how to play with the data. It's definitely, I've certainly picked up a lot more business analysis skills, trying to figure out how to slice and dice and take the information and make it something that's going to inform a decision. I think so. That's certainly one way it's changing. It's also opening a whole avenue in the data itself. There's, teams of people who do nothing but work with the data all day. So
new jobs.
New jobs.
That are there. They're really taking a look and being able to understand what that means.
And not only new jobs, but trying to move up the ladder of, being less a number cruncher and more a number analyzer and bringing insight to the table instead of just, I'm not going to deliver you a report, I'm going to deliver you what I interpret and that's going to benefit you from the report. So turning us more into insight professionals.
Which can really help leadership, it sounds like, make better decisions around what they need to be doing and what they need to have in place to ensure that they've got that succession pipeline,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because succession planning, in today's world, by the time you're ready, you've spent all the time investigating who the runners up and, who could do, from a mobility standpoint or a diversity standpoint, who's going to be a successor. And then by the time you need that, the data's old. and You're kind of back to square one. How do I get that person that I really need that's going to fit the role the best?
Yeah. I'm curious, what kinds of challenges or costs might be associated or might a company encounter when they're integrating talent development? So if they've not done this, or they look at it and say, oh, I haven't been doing this well, and they want to really amp it up.
Well, good old-fashioned planning certainly comes into play, and it really depends on what you're trying to do. I've spent a good portion of my career in financial services, and a lot of that industry has been shaped by mergers and acquisitions. It used to be this bank, and now it's got a new name on the marquee. So it's something that could be as simple as, I'm going to support my managers in having the discussion about, okay, we're going to be merging. I'm going to tell you, just to have a structure for a simple meeting on change management that every department could have with their team to explain what the change is that's coming. Here's what I as a leader, my experience of it and what I'm thinking about it. I want to hear what you're thinking about it. And just something as simple as facilitating that kind of conversation and dialogue could have a huge impact as to whether the employee feels like, all right, my manager is with me on this. I don't, yeah, there's going to be uncertainty and ambiguity, but I think I can have this, I can go to him or her with the questions I have. That's huge in terms of organizational impact. If you have an entire workforce that's walking around wondering what's going to happen next, they'll start to jump ship because Maslow's hierarchy.
Well, absolutely.
They're thinking, I've got to put the
absolutely. Well, and fear is going to drive a lot of people. If they don't feel they're going to be able to make a contribution because of some change initiative, they're gone.
Exactly. So you really, that's managing the human element. That's the talent.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what this is all. It's all about that people development.
Yeah, and then costs could range. Learning management systems are very helpful tools. There's a ton of them.
Right.
Some are pricey, some are less pricey. And making the right decisions and what's going to fit with your organization can have a cost. Right. And there's certainly
and they can grow with as well. I mean, there's a lot of different factors when selecting an LMS.
It's a big, multi-billion-dollar industry. It's still evolving and transforming. Having more of the talent systems integrated is still happening. So a lot of investments have been made in the past in more compartmentalized. So I've got my learning management system over here, my performance management system over here. How do I get them to talk to each other?
Right.
So there's certainly costs in the technology space. And of course, with any kind of project or program implementation, you're looking at how much am I going to spend and what's the impact I'm expecting to get out of it, and you've got to make those trade-offs along
Make sure you
the way.
got that ROI that's needed. Absolutely at the end of the day. So what would really motivate an employee to really fully immerse themselves in a talent development program? Many people say, oh, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But from your perspective?
I think it goes back to a lot of the indicators that we know are triggers for engagement. And when I think about engagement, it's more of what's a measure of how much is Kelly going to go above and beyond the call of duty and really give her expertise in the work. So a lot of it has to do with believing that the manager understands what I want to do with my career, so that career advancement element. Has to do with alignment to the strategy. I see how my work is helping this broad organization or the company itself. I feel like I'm listened to, I'm heard. So if I've got a great idea, I want to make sure that I feel like I can speak up and make progress that way. So there's a lot of the factors around employee motivation that have to do with how engaged an employee is going to be. And of course, the payoff is when you're more skilled, you're able to take on different kinds of roles that, not doing the same thing all the time, getting a little more variety, which for some is
important, right? They like that challenge.
And you might not. So I might love that, you might hate that. So
absolutely. Just don't make me change.
So
just kidding.
You've got to really figure out what's the strength that a person wants to play on, and
sometimes they don't even know, do they, until they have the opportunity. They get into a stretch assignment, so this may be part of the benefit is helping them to discover some of the capabilities and opportunities, particularly amidst change, right?
Reinforce that they can do. Maybe they don't think they can do it, and it's just a confidence issue. So a good manager, a good performance manager is going to do everything they can to understand what really is, maybe I'll let you do this part of the project and have some safety net or have a culture that is accepting of failure. Because innovation would never happen without some failure.
True.
So how much am I really allowing you to try something, and what are some of the the ways that I can support that without nobody wants somebody to fail.
Right, right.
But I might want you to try a new skill, and even if you're not going to be perfect out of the gate, I want you to get that experience, because that's a big piece of learning.
Yeah, creating that culture where it's okay to go try, get on the cutting edge, try something, and then
Exactly.
you can come back if you find that it's really not a good fit. Yeah, there's
For
other
sure.
places they can put them in, other seats, as Jim
Right.
Collins would say, right?
Right.
So let's say you have the opportunity to talk to someone who's really interested in talent development. What are some of the indicators that, right, they've got the skill set, they're looking for a job in talent development. What are some of the indicators that would tell them clearly that this organization is committed to talent development?
I think a lot of it is a mixture of what the organization can do, but also that personal relationship with your manager, because a lot of people will leave a manager, not an organization. So there's a big accountability, I think, of that shared accountability, that it's your manager's role with you to partner in that.
So talking to employees to find out, one, is that relationship really there? Do they have clear, transparent, maybe conversations with their manager?
Is the opportunity there for team members to go outside the organization? There's a lot of great professional associations and industry training that's available. So is that an avenue that they are allowed to pursue? Are you allowed to do training during work hours?
Yeah.
That might tell you how committed an employer is. Yes, that they want to build that skill, and that is part of your work.
And we're going to have to end on that note, Kelly. Thank you. Kelly Giordano, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Debbie.
And on behalf of my guest and everyone here on the set of Your Career, thank you for watching, and remember, be career happy.
More information about this program is available online at millermediagroup.org.